Hey everyone, and welcome back to Miles on the Grid. If I'm honest, I think it's episode 9. Personally, I don't really care. We're just having a good time. And yes, that did turn out to be a bit of a rhyme. In today's episode, we've got Cameron from CameronF1 joining us. We're going to be talking all things alleged, cost cap gate. We're going to be talking all things driver market chats, Alpine, Pierre Gasly, Mick Schumacher, Danny Rick, P5. We're not saying a word. But also potentially looking at the greatest wet weather drivers as it stands, because two of our favorites, well, two of the best in the wet, one favorite, one not so favorite, didn't necessarily have their best race this weekend. And other people like Tire Whisperers, Sergio, the Minister of Mexican Defense, managed to win the race. So let's get into it. Cameron, welcome back. Thank you for joining us. Good to have you, man.
Privilege and an honor, as always, mate. As always, Miles on the Grid. Put some respect on that man's name.
Mate, have you? I wish I could be as dashing as yourself in terms of the dress and everything right now. Look at that. That is the epitome of an F1 business exec, dare I say. You're someone that is ready to enter the grid, walk on, take control of certain teams' finances, allegedly, and kick on from there. But look, let's get straight into it. Singapore was at the weekend. We had a situation where teams like Mercedes were in the chat, Alpine even seemed to be in the chat from FP2, sort of fell away. The race unfolded. Safety car, safety car, safety car. It should have been the safety car Grand Prix. Turned out to be a bit of a mess, right? What was your sort of take on that?
Oh, bro, I'll be honest, I wasn't this isn't the exam answer as a purist, Miles, but I really wasn't feeling it, bro. I'm in it for the competition and I want to see. Listen, there were a couple laps back there when it looked like Charles was going to mount a challenge on Checo Perez, and I was all in for that. I enjoyed those few laps, but again, Charles did the Charles thing and took too much out of his tyres too quickly, didn't he? But the rest of it, take or leave it, if I'm honest with you, Miles. And again, I know as a racing purist, I shouldn't talk about a Grand Prix such as Singapore like that, but shoot from the hip these days, Miles. I don't care. I don't care if people want to relegate my purist status to part-time casual. I don't care, Miles. I didn't enjoy it that much. Company was great for me. Again, I was on the last lap chatting with Niran and Dirk and Aiden. So it was jokes.
Yeah.
But I wasn't enthralled for large portions, let's say.
No, I understand that. And I think it was a Grand Prix which I wanted to love, and don't get me wrong, looking forward to the weekend. I thought, yes, putting bias up there, Lewis's first chance to win a Grand Prix properly this weekend. Smoking in FP1. FP2, yeah, okay, looking at long runs with a bit of data. Came quali, he was on fire, right? And you're thinking, okay, cool, this is my guy's time. Even qualifying third, I thought, it's not that bad. 5/100ths of a second, not that bad. We'll take it. Yeah, get a good launch of the line.
Should have been polled on Mars, let's be honest.
Should have been polled.
For that mistake. Another uncharacteristic mistake from Sir Lewis Hamilton, a cheeky lockup.
I don't want to ask the question on that mistake.
Ask it. Would he have made it 5 years ago? Is that what you're going to say, Mark?
We wouldn't have seen this in Lewis. I'm not covering that Lewis, by the way, before anyone comes at me. I don't think we would have seen this in the Lewis 4 years ago, bar Hockenheim.
But go on then, Mars. Let me pitch a question back at you then.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't we have seen this 4 years ago? Why do you think, in your estimation?
Well, I'm not trying to sound smart here. He was just younger. Like his reflexes, his focus level. I'm not saying that Lewis isn't focused. I'm not saying that he's not at the top of his game, but there's starting to be these few moments where we're seeing we're not seeing his talent ebb away in the same way we're seeing it with Cristiano Ronaldo, right? And that's the sad thing to say, because I'm a Man United fan. But in terms of Lewis's ability in the wet, we've seen Imola last year. We've seen it's hard because there's not that many instances, right? We saw Imola this year. We saw a few other moments. We've seen Germany 2019. These are all little things. And don't get me wrong, Turkey came, and I saw your post about Martin Brundle and his admiration of Lewis. Turkey was a masterclass. No one was doing that. I don't care who you are, what you do, who you support. No one else was doing it, right? It was literally like Fuji 2007 all over again. He schooled everyone. and lapped his teammate, but he didn't lap him. He didn't lap Alonso. But you get where I'm coming from. We're seeing Lewis start to make these uncanny mistakes, these uncharacteristic mistakes, which I just personally am a bit worried about. That's all I'm going to say. I don't want to say he's in decline, because he's not. He could come out and smash Suzuka this week and prove me wrong and prove any doubt that I had out. But that's just my fault. What's your take? Because I could see you winded up a bit.
So I've gone on record and made videos about this story arc of any F1 driver in history, right?
Yeah.
It is a known fact that athletes in any sport will peak and hit their zenith anywhere between 20 and 25 physical peak.
Yeah.
And then everything after that is you're playing with house money, right? It's one of these, Miles. It just is. That's just the truth.
Yeah.
And I suppose that's borne out if you look at F1 over the past, I want to say, don't quote me on this, but I think over the past 50 something years, there's only been about 4 drivers who have won an F1 championship at Lewis's age or older.
Yeah.
Andretti, Prost, Mansell, someone else in there. There's one other.
There's one other. Yeah.
I can't remember. Anyway.
Ascari? No, it's not Ascari.
Ascari did, but Ascari is not within the last 50 years, right? That was 1950 something. So I think Lewis isn't okay. Let me just say this for the avoidance of that. I'm not saying that Lewis is finished. I wouldn't say though that Lewis is. I don't think he's getting any better. Let's say, but the why behind what's going on here, Miles, for me, is a story of circumstance, right?
Yes.
The best drivers at their best, it's all about capacity. 80% all focus on the driving middle. They've got this spare 20% to focus on other things, whether that's development of the car, brake bias, I don't know, other things they can cope with, not pertaining to driving the car. Lewis at the moment, though he's of course a great driver, he's having to look over his left shoulder about George. He's having to look over his right shoulder about vertical oscillations. He's having to look behind him directly because no longer is he at the front, he's in the midfield. So he's juggling, and then FIA having a word with him about piercing. So there's all these things going on, which will take up that extra 20% of capacity that he had before as one of the greats, if not the greatest racing driver that we've ever seen, Miles. So I just think circumstances are changing for him. And let's be frank and honest. Listen, Mercedes have made progress, mate.
Yeah,
but they're not there. But they're not there yet. They're not there yet. That I'm not going to call it a trap to the W13, but he doesn't have the proper wheels under him yet. It's not RB18.
Yeah,
it's definitely not that. So. Listen, I kind of I still want to put some respect on Sir Lewis's name in that sense and contextualize what we're seeing from the fella, because he's making more uncharacteristic mistakes. But I think the why behind that, the driver, no pun intended, is quite important. There's a couple of balls that he's juggling, a few more balls than usual, Miles, I think.
I think you're right, and I think if I take it back into context, like you mentioned, we saw the W13 bouncing like hell. You know, it wasn't like, oh my gosh, this is Spain, for example, and it definitely wasn't Silverstone where Lewis had the pace to match the leaders. Yes, he was quicker than Carlos. Carlos, I'm not going to touch on that. That's a whole other feature coming up. But Lewis, like you mentioned, was, there's something there. That's a Ferrari fan. I can't not talk about that. But
what are you talking about now? The Delta? Sorry, I'm interrupting you.
No, you're right. Yeah, about the delta that Carlos has to Charles in the race on most occasions, as well as his quality delta, which is on average 3/10 nearly every single session. I'm not against Carlos Sainz, people. I'm not, if you're watching this, but just facts, right? It is what it is.
Miles on the grid. Diplomat extraordinaire. I'm against Carlos Sainz. I'll be honest with you, mate. Straight up, I would say against in the sense that, listen, can't we all just be a bit objective sometimes, Miles? Can't we all just say? Can't we just do catchphrase and say what we see? He's just getting destroyed by Charles Leclerc. Every time there's a safety car and they'd bunch up, you'd look away and then look back at your screen, and Charles Leclerc's another 10 seconds down the road. WTF, Miles? How can we? Where is the redeeming feature in that Carlos Sainz Jr. performance? Because I can't see it. I can't see it.
Not in Singapore, but I do think that there's an aspect to Carlos's game in terms of his intelligence within the car that I do believe the great show, and I'm really and this, don't get me wrong, I'm hoping for his own sake, not for my own. I've got no investment in him. I'm hoping for his own sake that he's able to start developing that extra tenth, that extra 2 tenths, bring him up to. It's hard. That's natural ability, right? That's Lewis Max. I'm gonna hate myself for saying it. Dare I say Lando Norris-esque levels?
Oh,
And I'm not a Lando fan. There's many reasons why, but I'm not. But on pure ability, the dude is outscoring Daniel. But just taking it back to Carlos, if he can develop that extra step or two, which he may never do, he could put himself in contention. Anyway, moving on from Carlos, just thinking about Lewis, I think there is context, and I think you're right. I think it's important for us to always have a wider look at, okay, he's had to develop the car from, not develop the car, he's not an engineer, but he's had to take the team on the development path that he's looking for, that he and George need to share. This isn't, I'm captain of the ship and, you know, Valtteri, you've got no chance. This is George wants equal shot of a pie. We can't win the championship. How is it we can go and curate the best vehicle for next year? So then we can really see who's boss. None of this Zandvoort rubbish. Next question.
let's go. Love that. I love that. I would just say I am concerned about Mercedes that they still haven't got their head around the zero pod versus pod concept. It feels a bit hashtag indecisive, Mercedes, and sort your lives out, lads, and ladies, because it's I don't want to be sat here having these same conversations with you next year, Miles, about Lewis Hamilton still hasn't got the wheels underneath him, because I will not be pleased, Miles, at all. Missed opportunities all over the show this season, mate. Should have been a three driver fight for the title, and it hasn't been. It's Max running away with his 100 and however many, but he was 113 points down the road going into the race. I don't know what it is now since he's slipped up, but I mean, can't we just get a bit of competition, please, Miles?
Wow.
Please.
That's what the budget cap was meant to do, right?
Oh,
the budget cap
segues like a pro. Love that.
Not even. It was meant to bring the whole field together. And one of the main reasons why I wanted to talk to you about this is because I'm not going to go into the personal stuff, but you understand exactly why a budget cap is needed. And from a financial perspective, I'm just thinking about it as a fan. The budget cap had two purposes. One, to bring the sport closer together in terms of the lower teams like Haas, Williams, dare I even say Aston Martin at this point. And I like Aston Martin, but they're not top five, let's be honest. Bring them closer to the top of the midfield and then to the top three teams. Although the infrastructure would always sort of give those top three teams an edge, at least for like 2, 3, 4, 5 years. The second thing was the input of sponsors. Now, this is a part that really intrigues me. You had new title sponsors for Aston Martin, Red Bull, McLaren. Well, not title sponsors for McLaren, but you had people like Google Chrome coming into the chat now. Because of the cost cap, because of the fact that, you know, there's opportunity for teams to be bunched up and for them to get a surprise victory or something. If, and this is an if, because I know legal people watch this, if the cost cap has been breached or broken or misjudged, I think is this term, by any particular team or teams, then all of these things have been put into doubt, because sponsors are now going to be thinking, is it worth me investing in a sport that already has a preconceived notion of what it wants to achieve? Is it worth me putting in hundreds of millions, if not like close to $1 billion over a project over a couple of years, let's say 5, 6 years, to get branding into a sport that could potentially be tainted by yet another scandal? Forget the team aspect, forget the drivers for a second, because I'm really passionate about this, because I want F1 to survive. This isn't Drive to Survive. This isn't, you know, let's generate as much dollars. Bernie could see this sort of stuff happening before Liberty Media. Bernie knew, unfortunately, where the money was coming from his perspective. Liberty Media seemed to know where it's coming from. The FAA don't seem to understand what FOM are doing. Where does it end? Over to you, Cameron. Sorry.
Oh my gosh, leading question any Miles. All right, so no, you couched this in the right terms. You framed it well. That again, this is all word on the street stuff for now. That it is absolute speculation that Aston Martin and Red Bull have breached the $145 million US cost cap that was in place for the first time in the 2021 season. Again, people are saying that one of them is a material breach. People are saying that the other one not so material. But Miles, I get what you're saying with sponsors, but I feel like the sponsors is like the footnote in this story. The chunky stuff, the meat in this news story sandwich is what's going to happen. What's the penalty going to look like? And are they going to, because one of them, let's have it right. One of them, if it is a material breach, is to get banned from the season, right?
Yep.
Just like they did Schumacher in '97 on the back of the incident with Jacques Villeneuve at Jerez. That is an option. All the rest of them are the same across material or not material. All both of those punishments are the same. The one that sticks out is being banned and excluded from a championship. Now I want to see whether FIA, because Miles, I'll pitch this back out to you, mate, before I go ham on this, no pun intended. If there is a team who has, and again, material, this speaks to the way that the FOM write then very noddy rules and regs. What is material? But define material, because material is a spectrum, right? Is material, where does material start though? Are we talking about 10%? Are we talking about 15, 20, 25? Why don't we define that at the outset, FOM? That's your first action point going forward. Define these terms at the outset, because they're not defined now and nobody knows what's going on. But if there has been a material breach, whatever that means, Miles, what needs to happen, bruv? What's the action? Put on your FIA cap as steward. What do you think needs to happen?
Depends which steward I am. I'm just going to pop that out there.
You are Miles on the grid steward. That's what steward you are.
I can't be certain stewards, otherwise I already know which way I'm leaning. But
like what you did there.
I think from it's a tough one, because I think at the end of the day, honestly, there's two paths. You've got the disqualification path of a team and driver from a championship. We've seen it happen with certain instances, Spygate 07, Jerez with Schumacher. We've seen it with, potential exclusion of Senna back when he had his own fight with the FIA, similar to the Saison last year. This isn't an unusual thing. What would be unusual from the FIA is if they took no action and declared a material breach, or something that would normally be a material breach, a minor breach, or treated it with the same level of severity as a minor breach. My preferred option, if there were to be any remedy, which is required if there is a breach, and this applies to both teams, if both teams are found to be in breach of a cap, is a reduction in driver points and a loss of wind tunnel time.
Oh, let's go.
And I'll say why, and I'll be quick, because I know that time's against us. Reduction in driver points, one, because whether we like it or not, any upgrade or any allocation or any resource does contribute to the overall success of an organization, its employees, and anything else. Now, someone could say to me, well, Miles, you work for X, Y, and Z. What if your company was found to be in breach? Would you want your salary, or would you want your livelihood to be impacted? And it's very likely that it would. It's very likely that if something were to happen to a company that I work for, there would be an impact upon my livelihood, whether that's redundancy, such as what the cost cap brought, unfortunately and sadly, to over 40 employees at every individual business within the paddock. Plus, there will be some sort of penalty, some sort of restriction, some sort of clause negating me from working for a certain type of company, depending upon if I've caused or added or aided and abetted a material breach, or even a minor one. So why can't, and this goes back to my Ferrari thing, why can't we have full transparency from the FIA? And this dates back to 2019 on Ferrari's engine agreement, or secret engine agreement. Why can't we have full transparency as to, one, who these teams are, just so that we can end all speculation? Possibly from a legal perspective, it's not allowed. Two, to understand exactly what percentage 5% is. Are we talking 5% before the cap was raised at the request of two teams, or 5% before, or 5% afterwards? Okay. Are we talking 5% in line with inflation? Are we talking? Are we averaging dollar versus cost? Dollar versus pound, because apparently everyone wants to now.
Oh yeah, FX translation, mate.
Like,
what a good exactly.
The pound's got nothing to do with it. The pound only crashed this week. Last week. So
pound has been losing. Listen,
unless you were in breach, unless the company was in breach at that particular point in time, why are you worried? No, that's my honest question. That's my honest question. But that's what I would do. I would do reduction in driver points. Championship would have an impact if it is the two teams in question. The rightful champion would be crowned. Everyone knows that, and therefore title is legitimized. But there's still a grievance. And two, reduction in wind tunnel time means that they actually cannot profit, any team, whether it's the two teams in question, I'll be careful, from any increase or carryover that they've carried into 2023 and beyond. Because at the end of the day, infrastructure is always going to be the backbone of the business. It's always going to lead to greater success or to greater failure, depending upon how you structure yourself. That's what I think. What about yourself?
Miles, you've covered it nicely, to be fair. But I'm just getting a lot of options here. The deduction of drivers and constructors championship points is the top one. Again, that's in both minor and major, so material and non-material overspend. Suspension from one or more stages of a competition in both minor and major. Limitation of ability to conduct aerodynamic or other testing. So that was your second solution / punishment for infringement. Reduction of cost cap going forward, an exclusion for the championships, the only one that sits only in major infringement. You know what, Miles? Let me tell you this, big man. I'm a little bit tired with the FIA and their penchant to do this play on thing. Stop playing an advantage. They've been doing this for the past 16 months, and it's only caused hurt and heartache. You know what? If I was a betting man, you know what I'm betting on? Here's what I think they might do if they're going to dock points. So look, the championship ended 387.5 points for Lewis Hamilton last year. Max Verstappen obviously won it 395.5 points. What's that, diff, Miles? That's 8 points. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised, Miles, if the FIA docked Max Verstappen 7.5 points or less, just to ensure that nothing changes via the championship, because that's what they've been. Listen, Miles, let's have it right, man. If past this prologue, they've been doing this thing. This penalty, a penalty isn't a penalty if it doesn't change the outcome of the race, right?
Exactly.
You could argue as far back as Silverstone. So the penalty that they gave to Sir Lewis, rightly or wrongfully, ultimately didn't affect the outcome of the race. The penalty that they gave Max Verstappen for the brake test, again, didn't affect the points that he gained. The penalty or non-investigation that they gave or didn't give Max Verstappen for the overcrowding Turn 4 Brazil 2021 didn't affect the outcome of the race. They've been doing this thing, this play on advantage. They've been doing it for the longest time, Miles, and it wouldn't surprise me if no action or an action like 7.5 points or less, so that Max Verstappen still keeps his crown. It absolutely wouldn't surprise me. And clip that one up, Miles, because I freestyled that and it sounds like genius. Just as I'm saying it, I'm like, why isn't that on the CameronF1 channel yet?
No, I will. And you know what, man? I think you're right. One other thing which I could see, and just following on from what you said about the reduction in points, I could even see them deducting 8 points to completely shut Toto Wolff, Mercedes, Lewis, us up, and basically saying, you know what, they both have the greatest season in F1 history, blah, 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 blah.
But then Max still wins on countback, doesn't he? Because he's won more races.
You see where I'm coming from. So I think they can either way, as a unbiased but a partisan fan, I'm not going to be happy in terms of if, and this is a major if, because I have friends at Red Bull, if Red Bull were to be in breach of the cost cap. Now, is that fair on Max? No. Should it be fair on Max? This is a question, because if you look at Spygate 07, Lewis and Fernando, they're both hauled in front of the international courts, and they both, dare I say, testified, according to my memory and also Wikipedia. Then they looked at the fact that they had no prior knowledge of the team's involvement and let them keep their championship points. I could see the FIA saying, you know what, there's precedent. Where there's smoke, there's fire. Let's follow that. Mate, it sucks. I'm excited to see what Wednesday holds. And if there's no material breach or minor breach, you know what, Red Bull, Aston Martin, well done. But I don't think there's smoke without fire in the F1 paddock. There never has been. The same way we're seeing these Gasly to Alpine rumors, and we've been seeing it for, what, 2 years on and off. The same way we heard about Daniel Ricciardo and his seat, and it wasn't safe. And Zach Brown came out on Any Driven Monday and made that statement, and everyone's like, oh, no, it's fine. You know, writing's on the wall when you see something like that from your CEO, right? So if they are in breach, I can't comment to the ferocity that Toto Wolff may feel, but I could understand it. If they aren't in breach, I cannot comment on the ferocity that Christian Horner and Lawrence Stroll may feel, because there was a picture of them together on the grid, and that was interesting, that they both may feel towards any given party that's spoken about it. My issue is this, and I'll wrap up on the cost cap on this. My issue is, if you are not in breach, there's two ways to go about it. To defend your honor and your reputation so that it doesn't ever become back on you saying you didn't think about it, or to stay stum, like Aston Martin are doing, apart from Mike Kratz's miniature quote on the weekend, and say, I think we've been in compliance with the rules. Yes, you've been asked a question. You could say, I think we're in compliance. I'm not taking any further questions. Where there's smoke, there is often fire. That's what I think.
Miles, I will say this in closing. There's two things in closing on this that I'll give you. So I just think, I mean, if you look at other sports, right, if you compete in the Olympics, and again, the other sports aren't necessarily analogous to F1. They're very different, right? But if you look at anything in the Olympics, if you were caught cheating, and specifically what I'm talking about here is performance enhancing drugs, a la a Ben Johnson, a la a Marion Jones, bless her, because I still got a lot of love for Marion. But if that happens to you, what happens to the medals that you won during that period? You lose them.
You do.
You lose them. And Miles, that seems fair. And listen, that's coming from a dude. Listen, I'm a Sir Lewis Hamilton fan first and foremost, always will be. But I enjoy what I'm seeing from Max on the road, the perceived road to greatness.
Yes.
But this is equity.
Yeah.
Well, this is fairness, right? What we're talking to here. And so FIA and secondly, actually, and in closing, finally, we'll get to the bloody point, Cameron. PED is similar again. If I draw out that analogy, Miles, if you're competing and you decide that you're going to go on a program, let's say a performance enhancing one, the likes of which Barry Bonds went on, Marion, all these bods on. If you go on that for 6 months, right, only, and then decide you're going to go clean after the 6 months. After that 6 months, Miles, the benefit of the PEDs does not go away. This is a durable competitive advantage that you will carry with you. It's like a pyramid, right? You can carry that through for the rest of your life, Miles. This punishment then needs to address that, whatever it is. I don't, even as I'm looking at the list, Miles, I'm not sure that any one of the ones that we've actually read out actually does that properly, addresses the durable competitive advantage that can come from cheating. Let's be honest. So the FIA, I'm not even talking about these punitive punishments that we've alluded to. I'm saying that the FIA need to strike down with furious vengeance and anger on anybody who cheats, Miles. That's fairness, and that's parity, and that's the way that any regulatory body worth its mettle needs to run and police a sport.
I'm going to use a Sir Alex Ferguson quote just to wrap up that mini segment, because I know we've got about 5 minutes. No one's bigger than the team. And in this moment, the team is Formula One as a whole, as a Formula One family. It's a motorsport family. It's Formula One, right? You can't say you're the pinnacle without looking after the team. David Beckham, greatest player of all time, in my opinion, got the boot after he thought he was bigger than the team. Roy Keane, all of them.
Best defender in the world.
best
See
defender in the
you
world.
later, mate.
You know, like Rooney got told where to go as well. Like at certain points, these no team what's your language, Miles? No team superstar, I think is a nice way of putting it, or athlete is bigger than the sport. We saw what happened with Briatore. He wasn't like some shrinking violet. He was one of the faces of the sport. That's all I'm going to say. Thank you,
Mars. Though I need to put. I know the times we're short on time here. I'm about to drop a bomb. Have you ever watched the film Too Big to Fail?
Yes, yes, I have.
You know what I mean by that phrase, right? So, in that sense, and with these punishments in mind, predicting what punishments coming down the pipe for Red Bull. Are Red Bull as a team, as an entity in F1 in October of 2022 too big to fail or too big to be punished? They can't have Dietrich Mateschitz pulling the plug on this now. Too big to fail, Miles, or nah?
I would say no, just because of some stuff which I've seen recently. I won't comment on it because it's speculation and it's not great. Not great news. I think you know what I'm alluding to, but best wishes in that case. But no, they're not too big to fail. If Barcelona had to pull all sorts of levers, including their 4 financial levers, sell off their TV image rights just to get players signed this season, I'm not an accountant. No one's too big to fail, including Mercedes and including Ferrari. Well, maybe Ferrari because they got a veto. They could just say stuff you FIA. I'm not doing it. But that's my only thought process. Yeah. I think that's my only thought. Just because of time. I had a couple of questions.
Go.
In terms of driver market chat, who gets the seat at Alpine?
I want to say, isn't it Nick de Vries already? Hasn't that been announced?
No, not yet. We saw something come up from a French broadcaster.
Oh no, sorry, he's gone to Alpha, hasn't he?
Yeah, so he's going to Alpha.
Nick de Vries to Alpha. Gasly will be at Alpine. Sorry, I'm getting
Gasly Alpine. Okay, cool. 100%. No, that's fine. My hope is still Ricciardo at Alpine, but I know it's a long shot. That's just me being a Ricciardo fanboy. But yeah, no, I think Gasly should get the Alpine job. If not, I'm happy to go Jack Doohan. Give the kid a chance. Get off your high horse and prove your mettle. Second to last question, and we've got about 10 seconds for each one. Greatest wet weather driver on the grid right now.
Greatest wet weather driver?
Yeah, on the grid right now.
Flipping Nora, Mars. I thought you had 10 seconds. Oh my God, am I going to blaspheme? You know what? I'm still going Lewis, but I think Max is very close behind, and then Alonso probably very close behind him.
Okay, cool. I'd say mine is Lewis, Max. I'm not even putting Alonso into that chat because I've seen some horror shows. I'm going on Stroll. And on that note, everyone, Cameron, thank you so much for thank you so much for coming on. It's been a real pleasure, man, and I'm sure we'll catch up again soon. Enjoy, everyone.